Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today I'm going to be doing a quick primer on Sealed for Tales of Aria. Pre-release is this upcoming weekend. I'm excited to attend all the ones in my local area, so I thought I would give just a quick guide on what to look for when you open up your Sealed pool and how to pick which hero to play. So, some heroes are easier to build than others. Some require you to have more certain cards, right? So we're going to talk about Oldhim first. We also have Lexi and Briar, who we'll talk about after. But we're going to start with Oldhim, right? So you open up your pool, and you open up your six packs, and Oldhim requires a high amount of blues. Okay, so that's kind of the important thing to note for Oldhim. So Oldhim requires a high amount of blues. His ability requires you to pitch a blue. Basically, I mean, you could pitch a yellow and a red, but it's going to be more efficient for it to pitch a blue. And his weapon, which is going to be the Guardian weapon here, probably, unless you open the Majestic, which the Majestic's a big upgrade. But his weapon here also is going to require you to, I mean, like once again, it doesn't require a blue. It's just much more efficient to be a blue because you're only pitching one card instead of multiple. So blues are really important for Oldhim. Your deck is going to be likely 30 cards. It can be more, but it's going to be base 30 cards, right? It has to be at least 30 cards. And if you have a 30 card deck, you want it to be about 15 of those cards to be blues if you're going to be playing Oldhim, right? 20 if if you can, but you're probably not going to get 20. But 15, you want like at least half of your deck if you're playing Oldhim to be blues. So that's the first rule of thumb. If it's not that many, you're going to have a lot of resource issues and just not have enough resources. A lot of his cards, as you can see, cost more. 4, 3, 2, 3, 6, 4, 3. Like everything he has costs a lot, right? So you need a high amount of blues. These are just some quick tips for each hero, right? Lexi um, is also a little blue hungry. Not quite as many blues, obviously. It's not like a hard and fast rule for Lexi. There's not as much of a hard and fast rule for Briar or Lexi in terms of how many you need to have. But Oldhim, you definitely need a certain number of blues. Blues are important for all heroes. You probably want like 10 blues for each hero at least, but Oldhim wants more than that. He wants like 15, 20 if you can, right? So first note, you need blues for Oldhim. If you only have 5 blues, Oldhim will just not do well. He won't be successful, right? Second thing to think about is what equipment you have, right? So equipment are one of the most important parts of Flesh and Blood. The main thing is that they're a free card. They start on the battlefield. You don't pay resource costs for them normally. To at least have them, you don't pay resource costs. Weapons you pay resource costs to attack with typically, but you're not paying to have that actual weapon on the battlefield in the first place, right? So equipment are very powerful, and you need to look and see what equipment you have that are good, right? If I open a Winter's Wail, I'm more likely to play Oldhim. Or if I open a Rampart of the Ram's Head, I'm more likely to play Oldhim. If I open a Voltaire, I'm more likely to play Lexi. Or if I open a Duskblade, which I believe is in the actual Runeblade section, if I open a Duskblade or maybe a Spellbound Creepers, I'm more likely to play a Briar, right? But the standard, the common equipment are good too, right? Sutcliffe's Suede Hides is great for Briar. Um, Generics, are great just in general. But like New Horizon, uh, actually, I should say this: New Horizon is doesn't do a ton compared to how good Voltaire is. New Horizon basically needs you. New Horizon is more of a constructed card, right? So New Horizon, like you can try it out and you should play it if you get it, because it blocks for 2, which is good. Like I'm not saying don't play New Horizon. Like if you get New Horizon and you have good Lexi cards, play New Horizon. But you can't take as much advantage of 2 Arsenal zones if you can't construct your deck like a constructed deck with lots of reload and Voltaire and stuff like that. So New Horizon is not like insane in limited, but Voltaire certainly is. And yeah, if getting equipment, so that's the first thing to notice. If you're getting good equipment, that is a good reason to go into a certain hero if you have like a lot of their powerful equipment, right? So that's the main thing to look for when you're first looking. The second is since all of the heroes are 2 elements, you want to separate your cards into a stack for each element, right? So you're gonna have your elemental, you're gonna have your earth cards, your ice cards, and your lightning cards that I scrolled past here. So you're gonna have your earth, ice, and lightning cards. Okay, so you want to sort those into each pile. That'll make it a lot easier for you to know what you're able to build a good deck with, right? If you have powerful lightning cards like Channel Thunderstep, you have some red lightning presses, which is a really powerful card. You have some nice ball lightnings, which go together well. Electrify is a great card. If you have enough cards of that type, it's a lot easier to know you can make a deck, right? If you only open, a few powerful Earth cards, maybe you don't want to build a hero that's in the Earth, typing. Um, so that's an important thing to know. That you don't have to the element in them cards themselves are kind of the generics in this set, so you don't really have to worry about the generics as much. The only generics are the four equipment that are generic and the cracked bauble, which you should never play a cracked bauble. Obviously, it's just worse than a card. But yeah, so and if you get these, as long as you don't have anything else in their slot, that's better. You'll pretty much play these. Obviously, you'll take what you can get. Obviously, you're looking. These are almost all. I think they're pretty much all worse than running the actual class-specific equipment in that same slot. But they fill that hole if you don't open the class-specific equipment. But yeah, your generics in this set compared to previous sets are actually just your element cards, right? Your ice cards, your earth cards, your lightning cards that I scrolled past again. So those are kind of your generics. You want to know how much you have of each. And if you have one file, maybe you have like 10 earth cards, but they're all reds. That's not really going to be able to make a deck, right? You want reds are good, but really blues and yellows are more powerful in terms of like they might hit for less, but you're going to be able to play all the cards in your hand at least, right? And that's more a rule for Oldhim and Lexi than it is for Briar. Briar can run a little resource light if she wants. So now we're going to talk a bit about what we know of the format, right? So we know Oldhim is a little harder to build. Like I said, he requires more blues than you might be able to open, and he's a more defensive character, which means if he stumbles, he might not be able to do everything he wants, right? What key cards we're looking for with Oldhim? Obviously, we're not talking about the equipment. The equipment's great if you open a Winter's Wail or if you open his shield. If you open his shield here, Rampart of the Ram's Head. Those are both great reasons to go Oldhim, right? Or if you open his specialization, or Oaken Old. Those are good reasons, right? But uh, other good cards, right? His D-reacts are all pretty good, especially the reds in this scenario, since they will block for more than their rate. Awakening is a good card. Entangle is, you'll play all of these that are good, but for most of his attacks, you'll just want the blue versions or the yellow if you have to. The red will make it really hard for you to have resources. So Oldhim, you want to play like as few reds as you can, pretty much. The only reds I can think of that I would want to play are Snow Under out of these and the defense reactions. The rest of them, you probably want to focus on playing the blues and the yellows if you have to. The red Snow Under is nice because it's only a 3 cost, which makes it able to be pitched for just the blue compared to these others, except Entangle, but Entangle is just not that great. But yeah, in general, focus on just reds for defense reactions, but the rest, blues and yellows. And you're just trying to be defensive. You're trying to block the opponent out. You're totally comfortable blocking with 3 cards, keeping 1 blue, and then using that blue to pitch for your weapon, either the Winter's Wail or the token weapon, Titan's Fist. You're totally comfortable like doing that game plan, and that will lead you to victory. If you can successfully just block out and swing every turn with weapon, or block out. If they don't swing for a ton of damage, right? You can block with 2 cards, take 3, and then swing back with a bigger attack by pitching 1 and swinging with like a entangle, for example, right? So sometimes you have to take damage to swing for bigger, but you don't have to do it every time. This is the part of the video where I am going to say that uh, to consistently fuse a card, you want about 30% of your deck, or a third of your deck to be that type. So if you want to consistently ice fuse, you want 10 of your 30 cards to be ice. That will give you an 80% chance of seeing an ice card per hand. So, and if you want a 90% chance of seeing an ice card per hand or higher, you need about half your deck to be that type. So if you're going monotype, you want at least half your deck to be that type. If you're going monotype, if you're going mixed type, you're doing both, which you're probably going to do in limited because you just don't have as big of a card pool. You want about 10 of each to be that type, and then the other 10 cards can be generic cards or elemental cards that require the fuse. But if you want to fuse every turn with that type, if I'm trying to ice fuse every single turn or activate Oldhim's ability with an ice card every turn, you need about a third of your deck to be that type. And that's important for Lexi, who wants to consistently flip a card in Arsenal every turn. So as I was saying, Lexi can be a little more resource light. This is kind of a spectrum from Oldhim to Briar. So Lexi's kind of in the middle. You can run some more reds in Lexi, but you want to have a kind of an even spread in Lexi, right? Yeah, her reds deal more damage. Her blues cost, pay for the cost. Her arrows all kind of cost an additional because you do have to put most of them into the arsenal with Shiver. So her arrows cost 2 for the most part, except for like the 0 cost here costs 1. Excuse me. So yeah, uh, and she probably wants an even split, or you can go more into one than the other, like I was saying. Number 10, you want a third of your deck. If you have a 60 card deck for some reason, right, 20 of those cards should be that type. 30 card deck, 10 of those cards should be that type. If you want to have an 80% chance to fuse, if you want to have an 80% chance of having that card per hand, so you'll have an 80% chance of having an ice or lightning. That's good for Lexi because you want to be doing this every turn. Your turns you want to arsenal at the end of every turn. You never not want to not have a card in your arsenal face down. The important thing is that this has to have the card face down originally and turned face up. Her bow will put a card face up, right? So that doesn't work with it. You need a card to be put face down into your arsenal to be able to use that effect. Yeah, that the only really efficient way to do that every turn is to arsenal at the end of your turn. So Lexi's trying to, her frostbite tokens are really good, so is flipping a lightning card. So it doesn't matter if you're flipping a lightning or an ice card, you really want to be putting a lightning or ice card in your hand every turn. That said, some really key cards for her are going to be the arsenal cards that like electrify and polar blast. That when you play them from arsenal, you'll draw a card. So those are going to be really good cards if you see them in Lexi. Um, they do really great. They're ice or lightning cards, and they will you'll arsenal them at your end of your turn. You'll flip them with her ability at the beginning of your turn. You'll either frostbite the enemy or give yourself your next attack go again, and you'll draw a card after you play them. You'll play them after that. So really good cards. If you see a bunch of Polar Blast or Electrifies, that's a good reason to go Lexi. And outside of that, she's just really consistent. But the most consistent hero that we saw success with the most at Las Vegas is Briar. Briar can be the most resource light. Like I said, it's kind of a spectrum. Oldhim is the most, Lexi's in the middle. Briar is the most resource light. Most of her cards are going to cost 0 or 1, or some of them 2. And then her earth cards might cost a bit more because earth cards can be expensive, but lightning cards are the cheapest. So she's gonna yeah, she'll be the more aggressive hero, and aggro can typically be the more consistent strategy in limited. Depends on the limited format, but if you are in doubt of what to do, when in doubt, just play aggro. You can kill them, and if you can't kill them, you lose. But trying to kill people is typically a lot easier than trying to not die. And in a lot of card games, that is typically the easier strategy is killing people than not dying. So Briar's seems to be the most successful hero so far. We'll see how it goes across pre-release weekend and during the next 2 callings that are both limited, but Briar seems to be putting in the best results so far. With Briar, you still want a decent number of blues, obviously, but you can run less than you could with obviously like Oldhim wants like what I say, like 15 blues. Briar would really like she can run on 5 to 10 blues. It's not the end of the world. So especially if you're going more into her lightning, which is a resource light element. Okay, and you want an even split with her between non-attack actions and attack actions. She's trying to play one of each at least on her turns. It'll make her weapon, which is going to be down here. It'll make her weapon go off more consistently. Let's find that weapon that's way down here. weapon Rosetta Thorn will go off much more consistently. This will be the token weapon you'll likely have. I mean, you might have Duskblade, but if you've attacked with an attack action and a non-attack action, or if you've played an attack action and a non-attack action, I should say, then you attack with Rosetta Thorn, you're hitting for 2+2 arcane. This format, unfortunately, has no reason or no ability to block arcane damage consistently. So that's kind of a free 2 damage. Oldhim's defense reaction can block it, but it's a little expensive for him. He's paying 3 to block 2 arcane, and that doesn't even count blocking the weapon. So you're getting in 2 easy damage, and if you can consistently get off Rosetta Thorn, you're pretty happy. So similar to how I was saying you have an 80% chance if a third of your deck is a card, you probably want at least 10 on-attack actions and 10 attack actions to fairly consistently have one of each turn. All right, let's wrap up talking about, if you pull Majestics, most of the Majestics in this set and normally in Flesh and Blood are pretty powerful, so you'll play pretty much all the Majestics you pull. The powerful cards for each type. The elemental cards you want to be light with, like I was saying, because you're probably going to want to have 10 of each of the other elements your hero wants. So, if you're Lexi, you'll want 10 Earth, 10 Lightning. If you're Briar, you'll want 10 Earth, 10. Sorry, Briar is 10 Earth, 10 Lightning. Lexi is 10 Lightning, 10 Ice, and Oldhim is 10 Ice, 10 Earth. You'll want about that ratio. The other 10 cards will be your elemental cards here, or any generics you have. The dual element cards you'll always play if you get them in that hero. And then let's just look at the powerful other cards. So, like I said, the Majestic you'll play these cards if you get them really. Tome of Earth is a powerful Majestic as well. Evergreen is a great card because you can go to fatigue pretty consistently in this format. And if you get 2 blue Evergreens, that's really nice because you can have them and pitch one and play the other, and you'll always have those 2 cards kind of infinitely being able to loop. The Weave cards are really powerful. They're able to be played if you need them. They're really great in Briar, or they can be shown for a fuse. These instants are good. Pretty much all of they've kind of designed it where I don't think any of the element cards are really that awful. Maybe Flash is just mediocre, but in general, I'd probably be happy playing almost any of these cards in my deck. So the element cards are nice. You're going to be keeping them in hand to fuse a lot, so you won't want them. You care less about these being your blues in a lot of ways because your blues are pitching to pay for the attack that's going to be fused. So let me show an example. Let's say we have Lexi, right? We have a Cold Wave in hand and we want to Ice Fuse it. Okay? So if we have an Ice card in hand, you cannot pitch that card if you want to use it to fuse, right? So this card being a blue doesn't matter too much in terms of pitchability because you can't pitch it to fuse. So if your element cards are more of your reds, if you have a red Winter's Grasp, right, that's okay because you're keeping it in hand a good amount of times. Or if you have a red Icy Encounter or a red Weave Ice, you're keeping it in hand a lot to use and hold for a fuse. What that means is your blues can be more of your cards that need the fuse, right? So if you have a blue Cold Wave, it can be pitched if you don't have an Ice card in hand and you can't fuse it, and you'll feel less bad about that, right? If you have a blue, a blue Snapshot and you don't have a Lightning card in hand, or a blue Blizzard Bolt and you don't have an Ice card in hand, you feel less bad when you pitch it, or when you have it in hand, I should say, because you can just pitch it. You can just pitch it. So, yeah, that's really something I need to note. You want, if possible, your blues to be more of your cards that require fuse than these cards that you're not pitching anyways, unless you have multiples. The format's going to be really fun. This video is a little longer than normal, but I hope it explains kind of what you want to see. More blues for Oldhim, more resource light for Briar, kind of a mix for Lexi. Lexi, you want about 10 of each element in your deck, and then the 10 to be elemental or fuse cards or generics. And yeah, minimum deck of 30. Legendary cards you can only have one copy of. don't know if that applies to this set. I don't know if there's any legendaries. Oh, there are these. If you pull multiple of these, you can only play one. Um, and yeah, have fun. I'm excited for pre-release. Everyone, let me know who you're most excited to play with this set. Where you're going to your pre-release. What's going on in your area. I'm excited for my area's pre-release. Been here in Jacksonville. Excited to play and hope this video helps. Win some games for me. Like, subscribe, comment. See you next time.